Now, Doctor, your assessment work obligates you to comply with the 1999 edition of the Standard for Educational and Psychological Testing, correct?
Yes.
And the 1999 testing standards specifically state, and I'll quote, "The applicability of the standards to an evaluation device or method is not altered by the label applied to it, i.e. test, assessment, scale, inventory," unquote. Now my question. Given the statement that I just cited from the 1999 testing standards, those standards apply directly to you in your professional work, correct?
When I'm doing psychological testing, yes.
Please consider standard 2.10 of the 1999 standards for educational and psychological testing, which state, when subjective judgment enters into test scoring, evidence should be provided on both inter-rater consistency in scoring and within examinee consistency over repeated measures. Now my question. Your work in this case obligates you to comply with this standard, correct?
Correct.
Evidence of inter-rater consistency in scoring also refers to what is generally recognized and accepted in your field as inter-rater reliability, correct?
Also correct, yes.
Psychologists using the Rorschach often claim that Exner's system has resolved the problems of inter-rater reliability, correct?
Oh, indeed it has, yes.
In using the Rorschach in this case, did you rely on Exner's TRACS, T-R-A-C-S, or what is otherwise known as the comprehensive system?
Yes, yes, I do.
For research purposes, we know that the Rorschach can potentially be scored in a reliable manner, correct?
Oh, yes, all kinds of research studies demonstrate that.
And, Doctor, since 1991, the Journal of Personality Assessment has required a minimum inter-rater reliability of 80% before publishing an article submitted to it, correct?
Yes, yes.
But that requirement corresponds to what we might call the research reliability of the Rorschach, correct?
Yes, you could make that designation, yes.
And psychologists participating in those research studies underwent specialized training to reach acceptable levels of inter-rater reliability, correct?
Yes, functioning together as research teams.
Yes, and with respect to those research teams, what specialized training have you undergone to assist you in scoring the Rorschach in an acceptable manner?
Well, I've attended various workshops offered by John Exner and his group in North Carolina.
Okay, and those are not inside of a research facility, correct?
No.
Okay, so the use of the Rorschach in the field is something we could describe as field reliability, correct?
Now I understand. Yes, yes, that distinction.
And the field reliability of the Rorschach refers to how practicing psychologists such as yourself use it, correct?
Yes, you can define it that way.
Can you cite any data published in a peer-reviewed journal reporting the field reliability of Exner's system?
Well, Exner himself in his various volumes reports high levels of inter-rater reliability.
Can you cite any published data in a peer-reviewed journal reporting the field reliability of Exner's system?
Well, I'm sorry, I haven't committed that data to memory.
Thank you. In other words, the extent to which practicing psychologists fully comply with Exner's scoring procedure remains unknown, correct?
Not according to Exner himself.
I see, and can you cite any data published in a peer-reviewed journal that says that the extent to which Exner's scoring procedures are fully complied with is actually known?
No.
If the extent to which practicing psychologists carefully comply with Exner's scoring procedures remains unknown, we do not know how carefully you complied with those scoring procedures, correct?
If those levels of inter-rater reliability are unknown, that would be the case.
And if you resorted to your own idiosyncratic scoring method, your interpretations of the Rorschach in this case could be mistaken, correct?
If I resorted to my own idiosyncratic scoring systems, which I don't think I did.
Okay, but let me ask you this. Because assumptions about the interpretive accuracy of the Rorschach assume that it was scored properly, correct?
Correct.
Other than accepting your claims, We have no way of knowing if you scored the Rorschach accurately in this case, correct?
Well, I would offer my many years of clinical experience, including administering and scoring the Rorschach, to support the fact that I'm confident I did it accurately.
Now my question. Other than accepting your claims, we have no way of knowing if you scored the Rorschach accurately in this case, correct?
Well, if you just want to disregard the explanation
Your Honor,
offered.
would you direct the witness to answer the question that's asked?
You understand that you are to answer questions asked. Would you please do so?
Yes, Your Honor.
Now my question. Other than accepting your claims, we have no way of knowing if you scored the Rorschach accurately in this case, correct?
When you define it in the terms that you've defined it, one can argue that position, yes.
Thank you. The Exner system that you say you used here includes 54 different ratios and percentages in its scoring procedure, correct?
I knew the number was high, but I didn't know it was that high.
And because the Exner system includes 54 different ratios and percentages in its scoring procedure, the potential for error is enormous, correct?
One can argue that, yes.
Now, given the burden of scoring 54 different ratios and percentages, do you really think that you did it with no errors whatsoever?
I'm confident that I did it accurately enough to support my testimony.
But you cannot cite any data published in a peer-reviewed journal demonstrating that there is a substantial likelihood of your scoring these 54 different ratios and percentages in an accurate manner, correct?
Not off the top of my head as I sit here, no.
Thank you. Doctor, the journal Psychological Assessment is a generally recognized and accepted peer-reviewed journal in your field, correct?
Oh, yes, yes.
And a 1999 article by Stricker and Gold published in Psychological Assessment titled The Rorschach, Toward a Nomothetically Based, Idiographically Applicable Configurational Model might be relevant to your conclusions in this case, correct?
It could be.
Please consider Stricker and Gold's comments about the Rorschach, and I'll read it. On the broad spectrum of sensitivity, the Rorschach is uniquely suited for understanding the underlying organization of the personality and for generating hypotheses about unconscious contents of the mind, unquote. Now my question. If the Rorschach is uniquely suited for generating hypotheses about the unconscious contents of the mind, then using the Rorschach embraces one or more variations of psychoanalytic or Freudian theory, correct?
Well, given the considerations that you outlined, citing Stricker and Gold, then my answer would be yes.
And our unconscious experiences exist out of our awareness, correct?
By definition, yes, that is correct.
And our unconscious experiences can rapidly shift and change, correct?
Yes.
Therefore, we can never accurately identify experiences that are both outside our awareness and which can rapidly shift and change, correct?
If we are the person experiencing those experiences outside our awareness, which can rapidly shift and change, no, it becomes almost impossible for us to accurately identify them.
Consequently, it becomes impossible to verify the accuracy with which the Rorschach assesses unconscious levels of experience, correct?
When you use the term verify in that manner, I would have to agree, yes.
Attempting to identify experiences outside our awareness that rapidly shift and change invites conjecture and speculation, correct?
That can happen, yes.
Psychologist A and psychologist B can therefore arrive at very different interpretations of the same person's unconscious experiences, correct?
Well, in this case, we're not talking about psychologist A nor psychologist B. We're talking about Dr. Campbell.
Thank you,
in his
Doctor.
many years
Thank
of-
you, Doctor. Your Honor, would you ask the witness to answer the question that's asked?
Doctor, you must answer the question and only the question that's asked of you. If you feel the need to explain, your counsel will give you that opportunity on direct examination, okay?
Thank
You can understand that, right?
Thank you, thank you.
Doctor.
Now my question. Psychologist A And psychologist B can therefore arrive at very different interpretations of the same person's unconscious experiences, correct?
That outcome can occur, yeah.
And when psychologist A and psychologist B arrive at their different interpretations of someone's unconscious experiences, we don't know who's right, correct?
Correct.
And when psychologist A and psychologist B arrive at their different interpretations of someone's unconscious experiences, they can both be mistaken, correct?
You could argue that position.
And given mistaken interpretations of someone's unconscious experiences, those errors threaten to misinform and mislead a proceeding such as this, correct?
That outcome could occur.
Doctor, you use the Rorschach technique in this case, correct?
Correct.
And Herman Rorschach developed the first Rorschach technique in the 1920s, correct?
Correct.
And the ink blot cards Herman Rorschach developed are the very same cards you used in this case, correct?
Correct.
And Herman Rorschach developed his own system of scoring and interpreting the Rorschach technique, correct?
Also correct, yes.
But you did not rely on Herman Rorschach's original scoring and interpretive system in this case, correct?
Oh, no.
And Beck developed his system for scoring and interpreting the Rorschach in 1937, correct?
Yes, I know that Beck has developed a system. I didn't quite know it was 1937.
And some psychologists still use portions of Beck's scoring and interpretive system today, correct?
That may be the case.
And Hertz developed his system for scoring and interpreting the Rorschach technique in 1938, correct?
I know Hertz has developed his system, yes.
And some psychologists still use portions of Hertz's scoring and interpretive system today, correct?
Again, that might be the case.
And Klopfer and Kelly developed their system for scoring and interpreting the Rorschach technique in 1942, correct?
Correct?
Same cards, correct?
Yes, yes.
And some psychologists still use portions of Klopfer and Kelly's scoring and interpretive system today, correct?
I don't know if that's necessarily true. It might be the case.
And Petrowski developed his system for scoring and interpretation of the Rorschach in 1947, correct?
I didn't know the exact year, but yes, Petrowski has his system. Yes.
And some psychologists still use portions of Petrowski's scoring and interpretive system today, correct?
I'm not sure. That could be the case.
And Rappaport developed his system for scoring and interpreting the Rorschach in 1956, correct?
I know it's sometime in the 50s, yes.
And some psychologists still use portions of Rappaport's scoring and interpretive system today, correct?
Again, I don't know for sure one way or the other. That could be the case.
Okay, and between 1920 and 1956, there were at least 6 different scoring and interpretive systems developed for the very same Rorschach cards, correct?
Correct.
So between 1920 and 1956, there was no single scoring and interpretive system for the Rorschach that was generally accepted, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Now, Exner's 1974 system has gained general recognition for scoring and interpreting the Rorschach, correct?
Again, correct, yes.
And many psychologists will combine portions of Exner's system with those of Beck, Hertz, Klopfer, Kelly, Petrowski, or Rappaport, correct?
I don't know if that is the case.
Might depend on which graduate school they went to, correct?
I'm saying, repeat your question.
Might depend on which graduate school they went to, correct?
It might depend upon what graduate school the psychologist attended, yes.
Okay, and these idiosyncratic ways of combining Exner's system with other systems continue to indicate that there's no generally accepted method for administering, scoring, and interpreting the Rorschach, correct?
Well, no. The generally recognized and accepted method for administration and interpretation is Exner's comprehensive system.
Now my question. And these idiosyncratic ways of combining Exner's system with the other systems continues to indicate that there's no generally accepted method for administering, scoring, and interpreting the Rorschach, correct?
No, I would not agree.
How about this? The review of Oscar Burroughs and the Burroughs Institute, originally published as the Mental Measurements Yearbooks and Tests in Print, are generally recognized and accepted as authoritative texts regarding psychological testing, correct?
Yes.
Please consider the following comments from the 1999 issue of Tests in Print, Volume 5, regarding the Rorschach, and I'll read it. Quote, many variations in scoring and interpretation are in use with no single method generally accepted, unquote. Now my question. if there are many variations in scoring and interpretation available for the Rorschach, then a psychologist other than you could have administered and scored the Rorschach differently than you, correct?
Well, if that is the case, yes, but
Thank you. And if another psychologist scored and administered the Rorschach differently from you, that psychologist could also have interpreted the Rorschach responses differently than you, correct?
correct. If that's
And
the case.
Rorschach responses can be influenced by who administers the Rorschach 8+, correct?
Yes.
And the Journal of Personality Assessment is a generally recognized and accepted peer-reviewed journal in your field, correct?
Yes.
And a 1998 article by Lerner published in the Journal of Personality Assessment titled Schachtel, an Experiential Rorschach Assessment, unquote, might be relevant to your opinions in this case, correct?
It might be.
Now, in his 1998 article, Lerner wrote, and I'll read, to understand a Rorschach record, it is essential to be aware of its interpersonal aspects and implications. This means primarily that we must never forget that the Rorschach performance and the experience of the testee in the Rorschach situation are an interpersonal performance and interpersonal experiences, unquote. Now my question. In understanding a Rorschach record, it is essential to be aware of its interpersonal aspects and implications. That means anyone's Rorschach responses can be influenced by examiner-examining influences, correct?
That could happen, yes.
In other words, a Rorschach assessment amounts to a situation where examinee and examiner both influence and are influenced by each other, correct?
Yes. That,
Therefore, the Rorschach responses of any examinee can be different if reacting to another examiner, correct?
well, in theory,
Thank you. Consequently, another psychologist could have interpreted the Rorschach, in this case, differently than you as a result of obtaining different responses, correct?
again, in theory, that could
And
be.
you have not published anything in a peer-reviewed journal necessitating that we reconsider Lerner's position in this regard, correct?
No.
And as you sit here today, you cannot cite anything published in a peer-reviewed journal necessitating that we reconsider Lerner's position, correct?
No, I